Chapter 5. The Ballot with Which to Save Ourselves. African Americans did more than watch and wait. They organized, brimming with hope for the dawn of a new day. Alexandria, Virginia, Boston, Massachusetts, Charleston, South Carolina, Detroit, Michigan, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Little Rock, Arkansas, New Haven, Connecticut, Raleigh, North Carolina, Xenia, Ohio. East, west, north, south, all over the nation, black citizens held state and regional conventions to discuss the issues of the day and strategize on the way forward. They drafted addresses to the nation for the vote, for citizenship, for an end to the violence, for respect and recognition of their humanity. We are engaged in a serious task. We have met here to impress upon the white men of Tennessee, of the United States, and of the world that we are part and parcel of the American Republic. So said Reverend James Lynch at a convention in Nashville in August 1865. In pursuance of the great work thus begun, we are here to secure for ourselves the full recognition of our rights as men. During the war, this native of Baltimore, who had studied for the ministry at New Hampshire's Kimball Union Academy, engaged in missionary work in Union-occupied South Carolina and Georgia. Lynch was one of the ministers who met with General Sherman shortly before he issued his Special Field Order No. 15. Especially in the rural South, there were also clandestine gatherings to disseminate information and to bolster people's courage to persevere. Many meetings were organized by the pro-Republican Union League during the Civil War. After the war ceased, the League expanded its number of operatives working in the South. Frederick Douglass, ever the lion, ever taking the nation to task for not living up to its creed, led a band of his brothers to the White House in early February 1866. Surprisingly, President Johnson had granted them an audience. The men who accompanied Douglass included his son, Lewis, entrepreneur George T. Downing, one of Rhode Island's most prominent and wealthiest black residents, and educator John F. Cook, a member of Washington, D.C.'s black aristocracy. The delegation went to the White House to urge the president to get behind black suffrage. In urging Johnson to support black men having the ballot with which to save ourselves, Frederick Douglass reminded him that Lincoln had given black men the sword to assist in saving the nation. The president countered that if black men secured the vote, there would be violence in the South. "Yes, I have said, and I repeat here," he stated, "that if the colored man in the United States could find no other Moses, or any Moses that would be more able and efficient than myself, I would be his Moses to lead him from bondage to freedom, that I would pass him from a land where he had lived in slavery to a land, if it were in our reach, of freedom. Yes, I would be willing to pass with him through the Red Sea to the land of promise, to the land of liberty. But I am not willing, under either circumstance, to adopt a policy which I believe will only result in the sacrifice of his life and the shedding of his blood." Official: "Now, children, you don't think white people are any better than you because they have straight hair and white faces?" Children: "No, sir." Official: "No, they are no better. But they are different. They possess great power. They control this vast country. Now, what makes them different from you?" Children: "Money." Official: "Yes, but how did they get money?" Children: "Got it off us. Stole it off we all." A catechism in a Louisville, Kentucky school. While black people were organizing, protesting, petitioning, Congress served up the Civil Rights Act of 1866, a counterpunch to the black codes. With the exception of Native Americans living on reservations, people born on American soil were deemed citizens of the nation. What's more, the federal government was duty-bound to protect the property and the lives of all its citizens. Congress passed the Civil Rights Act over Johnson's veto on April 9, 1866, a year to the day of Lee's surrender to Grant. 2 months after the Civil Rights Act, on June 13, 1866, something even more momentous cleared Congress: the 14th Amendment. Through it, Republicans endeavored to embed citizenship directly into the U.S. Constitution, 9 years after the U.S. Supreme Court said in its Dred Scott decision that black people never were and never could be U.S. citizens. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside, said the 14th Amendment. It also declared that states could not deprive citizens of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or deny them the equal protection of the laws. Furthermore, the 14th Amendment pressured states to give black men the vote by giving Congress the power to reduce a state's representation if that state denied the vote to any segment of its male population aged 21 and older. The amendment also put a check on aspirations of former Confederate leaders. Unless approved by 2/3 of the House and Senate, they could hold no military, civilian, or elected office. Congress had the option of removing the ban, which it did in 1898. Also vexing for the former Confederate states, the 14th Amendment prohibited the federal government or any state from absorbing debts racked up in aid of the rebellion or losses incurred with the liberation of black people. White violence was a factor in the 14th Amendment clearing Congress. The previous month, on May 1, 1866, white people went on a killing spree in Memphis, Tennessee. Approximately 46 black adults and children and 2 white people were killed. More than 70 people were wounded. Nearly 100 black homes were torched. 12 black schools were burned. Several black churches were left in ashes. Large sums of black people's money were taken by police and others, wrote the Freedmen's Bureau Major T.W. Gilbreth to his boss, General Oliver O. Howard. The thefts ranged from $5 to $500, the latter being quite frequent owing to the fact that many of the colored men had just been paid off and discharged from the Army. The 36-hour assault on the black settlements in Memphis came on the heels of an altercation between Irish policemen and black soldiers. A rumor spread that black troops had killed white police officers. In response, the city recorder, John C. Creighton, took to his soapbox on the corner of Causey and Vance Streets. Creighton, reported Gilbreth, urged the whites to arm themselves and kill every Negro and drive the last one from the city. Creighton even prodded white people to burn up the cradle. Question. Now state what you know in reference to your husband being killed. Answer. He came home and said he wanted some supper. I was sick and said to him that I had nothing in the house to cook him anything from only a little flour. He went out of the house to get some meal. In a few minutes after, a sister of the church, who lives next to me, came in and said, "Sister Lavinia, Jackson is killed." Question. When you went out to see him, how did he lie? Answer. When I first went out to see him, he was laying partly across a log, groaning. I placed my hand on his breast and called him, but he never spoke. Question. How long did you stay with him? Answer. I stayed as long as I could, until they told me to go in, or I would be killed. Question. Who told you that? Answer. That is what they said on the streets. They said the policemen were going to kill every Negro they could catch. From Lavinia Goodell's testimony on her husband's murder during the Memphis Massacre. A multitude of black people remained strong in the face of all the violence. Union Army veteran Wyatt Outlaw was among the steadfast souls. In October 1866, he was one of the 115 delegates at the 4-day North Carolina Equal Rights League Convention of Freedmen. Raleigh's African Methodist Episcopal Church was the venue for this gathering of black men representing 60 Tar Heel counties. Wyatt Outlaw was on the executive board of this Equal Rights League, determined to secure by political and moral means, as far as may be, the repeal of all laws and parts of laws, state and national, that make distinctions on account of color. After the convention, Outlaw formed a chapter of the Union League in his adopted home of Graham. Along with mobilizing folks for political action, this chapter made plans to build a school and a church. Outlaw organized Graham's Union League in his home on North Main Street, which was also the site of his carpentry shop. Like many other black men and women in their respective communities, Wyatt Outlaw continued to be a positive force in Graham for years to come. This we are going to use. Before the war ended, a slew of schools for black people sprang up in Union-occupied parts of the South. For example, within days of Sherman's arrival in Savannah, Georgia, in December 1865, Reverend James Lynch received permission to turn 2 buildings into schools. One had been a Confederate hospital, the other a slave mart. "It is a large 3-story brick building," Lynch wrote of the latter in a letter to the New York Freedmen's Relief Association. "In this place, slaves have been bought and sold for many years. We have found many gems such as handcuffs, whips and staples for tying, etc. Bills of sales of slaves by hundreds, all giving a faithful description of the hellish business. This we are going to use for school purposes." After Appomattox, more schools were established all over the South through the Freedmen's Bureau, Northern charitable organizations, and the muscle and money of black communities. Children and adults alike flocked to these schools, staffed by black and white people, from the North and South.